Janaranjana Yasodanandana Pratijanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from Canto 10, Chapter 8, and the text for today is 21. You can chant responsibly. Kalena Vrajatalpena Gokule Rama Keshavan Janubhyam Sahapanabhyam Ringamanam Vicharataham Kalena Vrajatalpena Gokule Rama Keshaval Janubhyam Sahapanabhyam Rangamano Vicharitu Kalena Vrajatalpena Gokule Rama Keshaval Janubhyam Sahapanibhyam Ringamano Vicharatu Kalena Vrajatalpena Gokule Rama Keshaval Janubhyam Sahajanibhyam Ringamano Vicharatu. So we'll do the word for word. Kalena, of time. Vrajata, passing. Alpena, a very small duration. Gokule, in Gokula Vrajadam. Rama Keshaval, both Balaram and Krishna. Janabhyam, by the strength of their knees. Sahapanibhyam, resting on their hands. Ringamano, crawling. Vijabratu, enjoy childhood play. So, the translation for text 21 and purport by Srila Prabhupada. After a short time passed, both brothers Rama and Krishna began to crawl on the ground of Braja with the strength of their hands and knees, and and thus enjoy their childhood play. Purport. One Brahmana devotee says, Sristam, sorry, I'll just read the English because the light's not very good here. Let others, fearing material existence, worship the Vedas, the Vedic supplementary Puranas, and the Mahabharata. But I shall worship Nanda Maharaj, in whose courtyard the Supreme Brahman is crawling. For a highly exalted devotee, Kaivalya, merging into the existence of the Supreme, appears no better than hell, not Karayan. But here, one can simply think of the crawling of Krishna and Balaram in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj and always merge in transcendental happiness. As long as one is absorbed in thought of Krishna Leela, especially Krishna's childhood pastimes, as Parikshit Maharaj desired to be, one is always merged in actual Kaivalya. Therefore, Vyasadeva compiled Srimad Bhagavatam, Lokashvayanate Vidvana Chakre Satvata Samhitam. And that's from Bhagavatam 176. Vyasadeva compiled Srimad Bhagavatam under the instruction of Narada, so that anyone can take advantage of this literature. Think of Krishna's pastimes and always be liberated. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurinmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Romapada Swami Iti Namine. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'm going to begin by reading the full verse that Srila Prabhupada is quoting in this purport from Srimad Bhagavatam 176. So that verse reads, it's not all Anartopasanam Shakshat Bhakti Yoga Madoksha Je Lokasya Janato Vidvams Chakre Satvata Samhitam. So this particular verse is quoted by Srila Prabhupada in order to draw one's attention to the fact that the Srimad Bhagavatam was specifically compiled by Srila Vyasadeva in order for one to be able to think of Krishna's pastimes, which is significant because here we are right in the 10th canto, going through those pastimes. And it's this thinking of Krishna is so that one can be freed from functioning under anxiety. So this quoted verse describes what Srila Vyasadeva saw. He saw that the unwanted misery of persons functioning under their learned mental patterns is something that needed some assistance. So this is the description of Srila Vyasadeva's view. So this is how Srila Vyasadeva was seen. So these are his words. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore, close quotes, the linking process of devotional service. So the mass of people don't know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. So everything has led to this particular point, the pastimes of Lord Krishna. So the remedy for becoming free from anxiety is to be in contact with Lord Krishna, or to become conscious of him. And Krishna says this too. This particular idea is expressed by him as well in Bhagavad Gita 18:58. He says, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, and the other part of it is, if, however, you do not act in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So that verse is Makchita sarva durgani mat prasadat tarishyasi. Particularly this part, I've read the Sanskrit for, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. So I'm just reinforcing that idea that Srila Prabhupada's expressing, which is in line with Krishna's statement too, that this fact that the Srimad Bhagavatam is there, that it was compiled by Srila Vyasadeva, is specifically to allow one to think of Krishna's pastimes so that one can be freed from functioning under anxiety. So the material miseries that Vyasadeva speaks of, these obstacles of conditioned life, meaning all these learned mental patterns that are there, these life impressions that Lord Krishna refers to, are those sufferings which are, that one in some sense is fettered by one's actions, which arise from previous life impressions. And this gives one the particular qualities that one has. So, for example, one can be fettered. It's like there isn't any choice. It's one's completely obliged to act in a particular way. So one can be fettered by one's actions arising from previous life impressions that give one the qualities of a Kshatriya, let's say, for instance. So those qualities can be heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, leadership. So these are the qualities by which the Kshatriyas are working, but one can say that they're fettered by impressions from previous lives that oblige them to act in particular ways, and hence those qualities come. So that's part of these learned mental patterns that are there, these life impressions from previous lives. So becoming conscious of Krishna means that one is not at the mercy of these particular life impressions that are imprinted on the mind, but rather that one's specifically pulling the mind and fixing it on one point, which is him, Lord Krishna. And just by doing that, by fixing the mind on the one point, which is Krishna, then one can actually cross over all these difficulties of these past impressions that push one to perform certain actions. So in the case of the Kshatriya, one could say, these qualities appear quite positive, and certainly that is so, but it's just emphasizing that point that the previous impressions are obliging them to act in particular ways. So in the case of a Kshatriya, it's in a very passionate mode. And so this tends to even override goodness. And so their passion mode creates these qualities of having confidence, fortitude, controlling others, and so goodness comes secondary in the case of a Kshatriya. So I used a fairly noble example, of course. There are different kinds of impressions that may be there in the mind for different categories of persons, but I used at least a very clean-cut one. So now the fixing of the mind means engaging the mind constantly in transcendental loving service to Lord Krishna. So unless one is engaging the mind in this kind of way in Krishna consciousness, one can't actually steadily control the mind. So one has to accept, one could say, the proper treatment to detach the mind from material engagement. So this verse today, it's highlighting taking advantage of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this literature, to think of Krishna's pastimes. So this is part of the treatment for allowing the mind to be detached from some other way that it may want to engage itself in. So I'm going to read an extract from Ananda Vrindavan Champu, Srila Kavi Karnapura, and it's in relation to these particular verses, or this verse that we're reading today, just to give an example of somebody who's actually putting into practice this completely detaching the mind from any other kind of way it may want to engage itself in. So he writes, Krishna is completely made of transcendental consciousness, yet he appears to act like an ordinary human child. Although he has assumed a charmingly soft and enchantingly beautiful form, he's actually the concentrated form of the absolute truth. Just for fun, Krishna crawled around like a little baby, pretending to be learning about the world. By such pastimes, he filled the Vrajavasi ladies with joy. So we can continue, because this is such a tremendous, these writings of Srila Kavi Karnapura are so absorbing that in some sense, just by us reading it, we're putting into practice this very thing of controlling the mind by engaging it in reading literature in relation to Krishna. So I'm going to continue reading. Sometimes the elderly gopis joked with Krishna and affectionately asked him, "Point to your face, point to your ear, where are your eyes?" And Krishna answered by touching those parts with his delicate leaf-like fingers. The ladies continued, "Krishna, show us your teeth." Krishna put his lotus hand to his mouth, smiled, and replied shyly, "My teeth have not yet come out." So this is a very young child, conscious of precisely what is supposed to go on at a particular time in terms of the age of the body. And the ladies are treating him as like a very ordinary child. Show us, where are your eyes, point to your nose. And when it comes to, where are you, show us your teeth, he says, he becomes very shy, because he's quite knowledgeable of what's required, but oh, my teeth haven't yet come out. So, continuing with the writing of Srila Kavi Karnapura, the wife of Upananda asked Krishna, "Who is your father? Who is your mother?" So this is to baby Krishna. "Please tell us." And again, beaming that irresistible smile, Krishna Kumara pointed towards Yasoda and Nanda Baba with his leaf-like hand. The Vraja gopis thrilled with bliss to see this. One nurse, brimming with material affection, tested Krishna's speaking ability. She said, "Can you say the names of your parents?" Krishna answered with distinct, softly spoken words. Then, to everyone's amazement, Krishna Kumara transgressed the rules of Sanskrit by combining the first syllable of the word mata, mother, and the second syllable of the word tata, father, and said, "Mata," again and again. So it's very charming. Sometime later, Krishna crawled into a room full of gems and jewels and became afraid upon seeing his own reflection in the jewels. In his enchantment, he tried to erase the reflection with his hand, but he could not. He could not remove the image at all. Overcome with fear, Krishna climbed up on Yasoda's lap in order to escape. So, these are detailed descriptions of Krishna's pastimes. Since that's a recommendation of this verse, I'm going into detail on into this section of his pastimes. Krishna tried to stand up and take a few steps on his own, falling on his bottom. He would look unhappily at Yasoda and cry for a moment. To encourage him, Yasoda held his finger and walked beside him. Then the face which had previously wilted from crying blossomed with a bright smile. Thus Krishna brought great joy to Mother Yasoda with his moon-like face, which bathed his body in the nectar of gentle beauty. So, reinforcing this kind of engaging of the mind in hearing of Krishna's blissful pastimes, Krishna himself explains that it's controlling the mind and it's striving by the appropriate means to control the mind. So this is the proper treatment for detaching the mind from its wanting to engage in some sort of material activity. And using this method, this treatment for controlling the mind is will bring success in self-realization, because what happens is that the mind starts to become attached to Krishna. There's the great beauty of his pastimes and his interactions capture the mind, so it becomes stilled. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Krishna's pastimes, up to now, there's been a mixture of grandeur, this Aishvarya. So killing Putana is considered to fall into the category of having grandeur. And then there's also pastimes like what we've just read, today's verse. After a short time passed, both brothers Rama and Krishna began to crawl on the ground of Vraja with the strength of their hands and knees, and thus enjoyed their childhood play. So something very simple. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that this is just sweet Sudha Madhurya Leela, just this little section that we've read, that they're using their hands and knees to crawl on the ground. And both are being presented, both the very grand pastimes and these very sweet pastimes. And the reason this is so is that both are worthy of remembrance of Krishna's, or both are worthy of remembrance by Krishna's devotees. And Srila Sanatana Goswami, he actually daily was cherishing Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes by Sukadev Goswami. So what we're reading, Srila Sanatana Goswami was cherishing on a daily basis. And he, as a result of doing so on a daily basis, Srila Sanatana Goswami prayed in this kind of way. And this is to the Srimad Bhagavatam. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. So this is Srila Sanatana Goswami addressing the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's his greatest friend, his constant companion, his spiritual master, his great wealth, his savior, his good fortune, his source of ecstasy. So everything is the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I bow down to you. And I'm going to read the Sanskrit of this prayer because it's so beautiful. Mad eka bando mat sangin mat guru man mahadana mad nishtaraka mad bhagya. So Srila Sanatana Goswami, he especially exercises this practice of thinking of Krishna. And he evokes remembrance of the wonderful things that Krishna is doing during his childhood in Vraja by summarizing Sukadev's narration in simple verses. So this is how he engaged his mind. He took everything that he was reading from Srila Sukadev Goswami and then he summarized it in very simple verses. So this particular verse of today, this is how Srila Sanatana Goswami summarized it. Victory to you who fully enjoyed your sport of crawling about. You eagerly moved on your hands and knees, which rubbed against the ground. Your innocent pastimes captivate the mind. So, Srila Sanatana Goswami put it into a prayer form. So here we are reading, after a short time passed, both brothers, Rama and Krishna, began to crawl on the ground of Vraja with the strength of their hands and knees, and thus enjoyed their childhood play. So because this whole emphasis in the purport is that the Srimad Bhagavatam has been written for the purpose of these pastimes, so that it can relieve one of so much anxiety of impressions in the mind. Srila Sanatana Goswami summarizes what he's read, and he writes, victory to you who fully enjoy your sport of crawling about. You eagerly moved on your hands and knees, which rubbed against the ground. Your innocent pastimes captivate the mind. So he's understanding something of the mood of Krishna, you can hear, because he's referring to Krishna's calling as being eager. And he's acknowledging exactly what Srila Prabhupada is saying in the purport, that the pastimes captivate the mind. So in other words, Srila Sanatana Goswami is simply saying, please make me happy by revealing your pastimes. Because that's the antidote to all the anxiety from having the particular minds that one has with all the past life impressions. One prays to Krishna to make one happy by revealing his pastimes. So Srila Prabhupada writes that there are different kinds of benedictions according to what a person is demanding. Because here we've just heard Srila Sanatana Goswami, he's asking of Krishna to give him happiness by revealing his pastimes. So persons who aren't engaging their minds in reading the Srimad Bhagavatam or focusing on Krishna's pastimes, they often, like yogis or those that are sort of engaging in philosophical, speculative knowledge, those persons want to merge into the existence of the Lord. So this is what's called Kavalya, which was mentioned in the purport by Srila Prabhupada. So Krishna is known as Kavalya Pati, meaning he's the master of the benediction known as Kavalya. So Krishna grants that benediction. So yogis that just want to merge into his existence, Krishna grants that. But devotees receive a different benediction from Lord Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada quotes in this verse Prithu Maharaj. He's mentioned in the purport. And Prithu Maharaj, here we hear what benediction he's looking for from Krishna. So these are his words. My Lord, I do not wish to have any benediction of merging into your existence, a benediction in which there is no existence of the nectarian beverage of your lotus feet. I want the benediction of at least 1 million ears, for thus I may be able to hear about the glories of your lotus feet from the mouths of your pure devotees. So one can see there's a completely different emphasis. If one's entered into the pastimes of Lord Krishna and the mind is absorbed in that way, then actually one sees it as drinking a nectarian beverage. And Prithu Maharaj is actually calling for asking for the benediction of 1 million ears. So he's able to hear about the glories of Lord Krishna's lotus feet from the mouths of his pure devotees. So that's what he's looking for. Quite different to persons who are closed off from that personal aspect of Lord Krishna. So engaging one's ears in hearing the glorification of the Lord from the mouths of devotees who are speaking from the core of their hearts is the aspiration that one has. So, often we don't have it here where we're living, but persons in India regularly go to hear reciters of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's considered that even those persons that are, it's not coming from the core of their hearts, what they're speaking. So even though they may be reciting Bhagavatam, it's actually, that vibration is considered to be material sound. It actually does require that everything's coming from the core of the heart. And the reason everything changes when the pastimes are being spoken from the core of the heart is that it has that effect of destroying anxiety. And that's only possible by the words of the pastimes coming from the mouths of pure devotees who are speaking from the core of their hearts. So it has that effect. Anxiety is destroyed, and it allows others to bring their mind to the focus of the pastimes. So these are some very simple thoughts that came today from this verse. It's what I was able to extract. If there's any thought connected to this topic.
Hare Krishna, Masaji. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your class. There's a few points that came to mind, but not really clear on coherent points. So I'm trying to kind of going on the freestyle here. So, well, one particular point that Prabhupada has mentioned in his verse is that as long as one is absorbed in thoughts of Krishna Leela, especially Krishna's pastimes, then one is always engaged in actual kavalya, or I guess some spiritual happiness. I guess obviously Krishna is the source of all happiness, and that's why he says, "Mamana bhava mabato mayaji mam namaskura." Always think of me, then you'll be happy. So the problem is that for us is that it's very. There's two sides to the coin. You could argue that it's easy to think of Krishna when things are going our way, and on the other side of the coin, it's also hard to think of Krishna when things are going our way, because we may become complacent, And so you were mentioning if we speak about Krishna and like you were mentioning those Bhagavatam speakers, the Bhagavad Sapta speakers, who sometimes they don't speak from the core of their heart, but if we speak from the core of our heart, and if we have the proper motivation, I appreciate at that point, then it can destroy our anxiety. And that reminds me of a verse that Lord Chaitanya told Rupa Goswami, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ata Eva Shant, Bhuti Muti Siddhi Kami Sakaliya Shant. He says that he describes who is peaceful, Shanti. He says if you do things for Krishna, then you'll be peaceful. But if you do things for bhukti, enjoyment, then you won't think of Krishna. You won't be peaceful, because in this world, sometimes things go our way and sometimes things don't go our way. So if we find in our meditation on Krishna, when things go on our way, then that's nice. But what happens when things don't go our way? We're not thinking of Krishna. We're thinking of maybe, some vengeance, this and that, etc. But my question really is regarding the point you were mentioning about when we speak from the core of our heart, it destroys our anxiety. And a lot of times we hear that from even in Krishna in the Gita, he says, if you do this, you'll get this result. If you do that, you'll get that result. But at the same time, he also says you should be detached from the result. And we see so many pastimes regarding this. Like Narada Muni in the beginning of Bhagavatam, it's described that, forgive me for forgetting which verse, but it's the chapter where Narada Muni is speaking to Vyasadeva about how he came to Krishna consciousness. And so there's one particular verse where he says he meditated on the Lord after his mother had died. He meditated on the Lord. He did his sadhana. He was, from your point of view or from your words, he was doing this sadhana from the core of his heart. And then he saw the Lord, the source of all bliss within his mind's eye. And one of my favorite analogies regarding that is that if we're connected to the Lord, just like a computer is attractive because it's connected to its power source, and it's unattractive is disconnected from its power source. So Narada Muni, when he meditated on the Lord, he was connected to his power source and he experienced the Lord. So then he tried the same process later on again from the core of his heart. And in that verse, it describes that the Lord didn't appear to him. He was miserable. He was like, where's the Lord? So when my question is that when sometimes devotees speak on, if you do this, you'll get this result. If you do that, you'll get that result. And so when people come to Krishna consciousness, they may be, okay, I'm chanting my rounds. I'm speaking from the core of my heart to the best of my ability. My narcissist is not going away. Or devotees, we hear that devotees are supposed to be nice, etc. So a lot of times we lose faith in Krishna consciousness. I could say maybe sometimes people lose faith in Krishna consciousness when devotees speak on, if you do this, you'll get this result. And therefore they may criticize a leader. You gave me this advice. It didn't happen. What happened? I thought you were in control. But Krishna could do anything. He's free will. So what is a person to do to maintain their faith? And how detrimental is it for devotees to give advice that if you do such and such, you'll get this result? Because Krishna, he's a person like us. He has will. So he may be testing us so many ways. So maybe you could elaborate on that.
So you were particularly looking at, or you gave an example of Narada Muni's discussion. And looking at this particular point that sometimes one can actually get a result one wants, and sometimes one doesn't get the result one wants. And so you were actually kind of interested in looking at that aspect of things. Well, I mean, results-oriented service as such is before one has made the connection with Krishna. So persons may be performing all kinds of austerities, and maybe they don't even know the purpose of it fully, but at least it's a pious activity. So in many families there's traditions of, you know, when there's an eclipse, you may undergo austerity of not sitting down and not doing any work, or, you know, some sort of austerity that's performed. I think even in the Jewish tradition they have that. So it's some sort of respect to a demigod, and that's a pious activity. I mean, it's a certain ritualistic activity. There's a certain result that one gets, accumulates a stock of pious points, so to speak. So it means one will get, maybe one doesn't know the exact result what one will get, but at least one knows that there's going to be some good karma, some positive deposit has been made in one's balance between piety and impiety. So, you know, one can cash in, so to speak, up ahead somewhere. So that sort of thinking is outside the realm of devotion, because with devotion there is the connections made directly with Krishna through chanting. So there's, one knows the personality for whom one is performing that particular austerity or service, and it's minus that component of looking for a particular result or thinking particularly I'm stacking up a good chunk of positive credits here that are going to give me good karma. It's that component doesn't feature in the picture. It's actually done without personal motive. So it's Krishna, practicing Krishna consciousness is true selflessness. So it's I notice it takes quite a time for persons that are absorbed in that kind of consciousness of accumulating pious credits. It's not transcendental piety, it's karmic piety, to actually be able to even think of performing service in an unmotivated way. There's no motive for self. So that if there's the connection made with Krishna, the link has made with Krishna, the personality for whom one is performing the service, and it's done in the proper mood, a selfless mood, then one is acknowledging that it is in the hands of Krishna how he chooses to reciprocate with one. So it means that one is not trying to control the actions that one is performing are in a separate category. Those actions are on a transcendental plane. They're not the actions that one is forced to perform based on impressions in the mind from previous lives. Those actions are a choice one is making, and it's very deliberate, and it is coming from a place of selflessness. So taking that understanding into account, then how Krishna responds in terms of one's own reality, and one's own reality is that one is forced to perform certain actions based on these impressions in the mind. So Krishna can intervene in the way things play themselves out on the material plane. He can intervene. How he does it is usually to allow one to go past those life impressions in the mind. So it's on a very subtle level, and one has to start with the premise that one cannot control how one is acting. But when one chooses to perform some sort of austerity, some sort of service towards Krishna, that is deliberate. It is deliberate, and it's within the space of a transcendental space. It's in the space of the soul. It's got nothing to do with the impressions in the mind. So it's functioning on a different plane of existence. So therefore one doesn't have to get mixed up between what is the result, so to speak, of one's selfless action or service towards Krishna, because one's not looking for a result. One understands it's selfless, it's to please Krishna. On the other hand, one is only looking for results in terms of actions performed on the material plane, actions that one's forced to make because of one's whole makeup, one's mental makeup, one's psychophysical makeup. So one should not confuse the two different ways of functioning. I mean, there's religious activity and pious actions that can be performed on the material plane. That can be result-oriented, and usually it is. Persons, like I've even heard it expressed like this. I'll give an example. So I came across somebody who, it was the family tradition. I mean, I used the example early on, so I'll carry on with it. It's a family tradition that at the time of an eclipse, one must be wide awake, one must stand, one can walk up and down, but one does not sit and one does not do any work. So if the eclipse is in the middle of the night and the eclipse goes on for 4 hours, for 4 hours one will just be pacing, one cannot sit, one cannot do any kind of work, one does not make oneself comfortable in any way. So it's an austerity that's performed. So it's an austerity on the material plane, and in inquiring, you know, what will be the result of this austerity, it's not known, but the person says, oh, my husband is trying to get a job situation that will allow him to not travel too far, because at the present time my health condition doesn't permit me to travel too far. So the hope is that he can find a job that's within a short geographical distance, or we won't have to travel too far since we have to move. So the person knows that by performing austerity on a material level, but it's pious, it's part of the family tradition, there's going to be some result, and it could mean that, you know, some difficulty will be resolved in their life, because there's an understanding piety will lead to, you know, some resolution of difficulty. So that sort of functioning is different from transcendental functioning. Transcendental functioning is selfless. So, and it's by the kindness of Krishna that he reveals something of his personality, that one comes to understand the beauty of his pastimes. So that's why it's called mercy. It's the kindness, through his kindness, that, you know, one's vision expands. And that's why one prays to have him reveal his pastimes. And that was Srila Sanatana Goswami. He's summarizing everything that Srila Sukadev Goswami has written in Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's in the form of a prayer. He's praying, he's acknowledging, you know, you eagerly crawling on the ground, but I'm praying to you, please make me happy. It's prayer. So one's whole life is in a mode of prayer, as opposed to a kind of selfish outlook. Not dead clear what the purpose of everything is, but knowing that somehow difficulties may be resolved by some pious activity. It's not that kind of functioning. It's the functioning of truly just depending on the kindness of Krishna to allow one to understand his existence. It's a completely different orientation. And by doing that, everything else falls away on the material side. One is lifted out of that forced way of functioning. So it's two very separate realities. That's a response. Thank you.
I'll try to keep it short, but thank you for your answer, and your answer brought to mind some points. Your main answers, well, one of them is selfless actions, and you're also mentioning the austerity of seeing the eclipse or material. And pray. You're also mentioning we should pray for, something. Pray to Lord Krishna for some type of benediction, and you also mentioned that materialists may do some type of austerity. So that brings to a point that of faith. Nobody takes a particular action of either praying or performing austerity unless they have the faith that this task, this difficulty, this austerity will result in happiness in the end. And so this verse is mentioning thinking of Lord Krishna. Now we have Bhagavatam, we have so many activities to remember Krishna, but I'll speak for myself, but I think I could speak for everyone really, because we're all in the modes. The tendency is that when we think of Krishna, it's like, where's the music? But when we think of lust, there's some transformations in the body, you could argue. Or when we think of money, some transformations in the body. So we develop faith on what arouses our senses, and it's like a stronghold. Well, what do you guys do for fun? We read about Krishna crawling on the ground. That's not very appealing to most people. You're like, are you serious? And so what are some steps we can move forward to, like in the Bible says, ask and you receive. You said pray. How do you pray, for the faith that Krishna, let me pray that I could have more taste for you. How do you pray for that when the faith is already a stronghold, when I'm praying for things that arouse my senses? I'm not even thinking about praying for that. And there's a quote that says, whatever a person is most devoted to, that's his religion. And so we may be, any religion, we may be practicing Vaishnavism, but the tendency is that since we're under the modes, if you make me mad, I'm going to convert to kicking your butt. We transform our faith, and then our whole mode of austerity and faith until we get the vengeance. And that way I enjoy when I see my enemy suffer. So how to step forward to develop that faith before Krishna really humbles us in a very embarrassing, humiliating way, like Nalakuvara Madhigriva or Hiranyakashipu, so many things. So I'm asking before that happens, because it will happen, because that's a tendency you commit offenses when you don't have faith in Krishna.
Yeah, this particular text of today was, and particularly Srila Prabhupada is putting the emphasis on reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so whatever the external things are, whatever the patterns in the mind, one performs that activity and actually spends time on a daily basis reading the Srimad Bhagavatam or hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, because that's the antidote, that is the remedy. That's a remedy to that pattern in the mind that is there's a thirst for some material something or other, or there's a thirst for getting back at somebody who's wronged one. Those are just patterns in the mind, and the remedy is the reading of, just like today, the very simple, sweet pastime of just crawling on the ground, Krishna crawling on the ground with Lord Balaram, and the delight of the interactions of the residents of Vrindavan, just asking him simple questions, just reading of the beauty of that. Knowing who this personality is, that he's going through all these motions, but he has full, complete knowledge of everything. So, and it pops out a little bit. Here they are simply asking him, show us your eyes. Where are your eyes? Where's your nose? And then when he's asked about his teeth, he gets a bit shy because he knows he's going to have to reveal how much he knows, but he says it. Oh, they haven't come out yet. So, there's a great beauty. So this is the remedy, to actually keep reading Srimad Bhagavatam, keep hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, because then the beauty of Krishna starts emerging, and it's the only remedy for the ugliness or the ugly patterns in the mind. That is the opinion of the great acharyas. So we accept it, and you pointed out that faith has to be there, that one will kind of believe whatever the mind is telling one to do, and whatever the mind's attracted to seems very real, and one will be drawn to, let's say you gave the example of money, and money means access to some sort of enjoyment. So one's drawn to that. The mind immediately goes there. So it's true, there's no doubt that our pleasure comes from material objects, because we are identifying with our bodies and the needs of the bodies and the needs for mental stimulation. But there's that necessity to, even if, one has to have some rudimentary faith to read the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is true, but even if that faith is not strong, the continued reading, the continued hearing, it nurtures the faith. So one has to perform the activities that nurture faith, which was your question, versus just staying with the activities that please the mind. So even if this is more difficult, one does it and keeps doing it. And because it's directly in contact with Krishna, and he's so extremely kind, he opens up the space for one, so one can come to see the beauty and experience the happiness of absorption in his pastimes. So one can just be patient, because it comes, it's there. So thank you very much for your kind interaction. I very much appreciate it. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.